Hey, what's up, everybody? It is the Tilted Roll podcast here again for me by myself. My name is Marshall. Franny. I don't know why. I my brain stopped when saying his name. Like I was supposed to be like Fran. Franny is not here again today. This is partly due to we were planning on recording this podcast during DaishoCon. However, due to me wanting to make sure that I packed a little bit lighter than normal and a concern about time and the space that we were going to be in, I decided on my own terms that we wouldn't do that. And therefore, as a result, there is no podcast with the both of us prepared for today. So hopefully within this week, we will be getting into that. But today, the reason now that I'm by myself, this gives me a great opportunity. I'm looking over, by the way. If you're curious why my eyes keep darting over here, it's because I have my readouts here. And I'm just making sure that my levels are good. Sometimes when I test versus when I actually record, things change. So if you see my eyes dart over there, it's just me monitoring. Something that's not as relevant when there's two of us and I can kind of look over and it doesn't seem as weird. But anyway, so today I wanted to use this opportunity with it just being me to kind of create essentially what is going to be a companion video. So this is a podcast episode, but this will also be a great companion video for one that I plan to make very soon, which is kind of going to be a video about how to go papered, like paper D&D, pen and paper D&D in 2019 and soon 2020. I may even call it 2020 because I think I'm actually kind of making the effort. I believe one of my New Year's resolutions I think I'm going to do for D&D is I'm going to play a majority of my characters. So the only two I will not be doing it with will be... Well, actually, so it's only one. The only one I won't be doing it with is my character for Embers by Daybreak, which is to go entirely pencil and paper. I will reuse paper. I'm going to make sure, obviously, to use it very conscientiously. I actually don't even throw out a lot of paper. But the reason I wanted to do paper D&D is not purely just because of like the pure standpoint, but mainly because it's really nice to have some of the things that are available to us to be able to utilize. There's a different feeling when you don't have a laptop screen. I don't mean this to sound like an okay boomer thing where like, oh, you don't like technology bad. No, I don't necessarily mean it in that way. What my concern and the thing that I've noticed or like that I've felt is there's a different feeling and emotion when you play with paper. And not only that, and obviously it's different if you play online versus in person. When you play in person, it's very different. But also, there's less congestion. The fact if you can consolidate really well, which you can, and if you know the game really well, then there are great ways to actually have less space taken up or at least you're more easily movable for your stuff when you don't have your laptop. So there is a benefit to it for sure. As a DM, having a laptop makes way more sense. Trying to go full pencil and paper DMing, you can go for it, but it's way harder. But for being a player is something that I actually kind of am going to be doing. I plan to do in 2020. And so I decided to make a longer standing guide. So this is kind of going to be like ways you can set up your character sheet to be more useful. And this could transfer to other RPGs. I've actually been almost entirely laptopless while I have been playing Stars Without Number on my Thursday campaign that is outside of this show entirely. So that kind of is what inspired me to really want to do it this way. So there are tools available out there, more and more, that will make this way easier. But just eventually, especially once you know everything, and there are ways though to get around this, and it is to utilize things like D&D Beyond, or potentially if somebody has written out there certain effects, but there's not many legit ones to do that with, so I don't recommend all those really personally. But if you want to, if you want to utilize this, there are ways to use all the online resources that are available out there, but then make them so that it's easy to use. And we're going to use some of the pages in this. See, I'm actually, and now I'm incorporating this. That's why I'm not using my camera. Actually, well, it's part of the reason. The big reason I'm not using my actual camera that we usually record the podcast on is because I neglected to charge the battery that is in my camera before this, and I didn't want to worry about it after DaishoCon. So I just figured I'll just use this for this video, and we'll call it a day. The other video is actually going to be using my camera, and it'll be actually a really fancy setup. So this inevitably will be the companion video, though it is being made and released significantly earlier. So subscribe if you want to check out that video about going paperless in 2020. But otherwise, we're going to start kind of on this character sheet. I will attempt to find this one if I can. The reason I like this sheet specifically that I'm using here is because it has certain auto fills. Now, there are plenty out there that will help, that you can just do everything by yourself. But what I like about this is that we're kind of being able to utilize, again, we're going to utilize the benefits that we have in terms of character sheets on here, like the digital world, into a paperless one. Now, some people could argue that if you're using a tablet, it then has about an equal footprint as a piece of paper, and I would agree. But a lot of tablets, it depends on if you have those already, and there's a lot of times I wouldn't recommend getting a tablet, just like the actual technology. I wouldn't actually recommend getting a tablet all too much. So at least today, it depends. It depends on what you do and what you need the tablet for. But I wouldn't just get a tablet for D&D. I would, if anything, just do what we're going to talk about here. So the downside to typing in things like ability scores, right? So you saw I could type in this and all this stuff comes out, right? I would actually recommend, if you plan to go consistently paperless for a long period of time, that actually you don't do this. You don't even touch any of this spot right here. Any of these things that are potentially going to change with level, or that are going to change with leveling, especially as you get different abilities, and like, because the downside, for example, here we'll put a 20 here, just whatever, right? So, and that we need to add our proficiency bonus. We'll say that's a 3. There we go. We'll say our proficiency bonus is a 3. So bam. Okay. So we've got I don't know why. I don't know why that was like, oh man, I'm so spacey today because of that post dice show, but want to make sure this gets done because this video has to come out tomorrow. So my bad. So we're doing a plus. So now we have the +8, right? So it did the math for us. So this can be super convenient if you're a new player and you kind of forget what all can go where. The downside of this is there's no expertise built into this PDF. And now if you have like the Adobe Cloud or anything like that, you can do things like edit PDFs and you can find ways to get into the code of this and maybe fix it. But otherwise, you're kind of stuck. So if you don't know any of that stuff, you're kind of like me, and you just kind of are. Well, I mean, while I can edit stuff, I'm not really an expert at PDFs and coding at all. So I would recommend, especially though, if you plan to do any changes though to your ability scores, or you think you'll be playing a character like a bard or a rogue who will get expertise / more expertise as you level up, then you can. Obviously, this will become a problem, and you'll have to do either erasing, you'll have to get some whiteout. So I mean, and you could totally just get whiteout and then write over it. But obviously, if you're kind of an aesthetics freak, like I am, then you may actually run into the issue of it kind of just not looking super uniform. But there are some things that obviously won't change all that much, or you can know they won't change. So for example, we'll say our character name. You're not going to see it over the webcam, sadly, but we'll just say, our character's name here is, Formator, because we're going to format this. Here, I'll drag this down. See, Formator. So I'm gonna do a safety like save as for another thing here. So let's give this a moment. Let's do. I'm just gonna save this to my desktop so I remember to delete it. To delete formator. Because we won't use this one for the other video. Despite this is a companion video, we're gonna kind of start from scratch. So, we're gonna kind of play around with this. So yeah, as we said, so the character name probably gonna stay the same. Their class and level, right? So your level, obviously, that's gonna change. You're gonna if you're gonna have a character, if this is gonna be a long-standing character for like a campaign and stuff like that, then this class is gonna last a while. So we'll say he's a druid, and but you would put a level here. But what we're gonna do, so we are gonna stick with a druid all the way. We're not gonna multi-class, right? That's gonna be our goal. We're not gonna multi-class. We're just gonna go full druid all the way through as much as we can. So from that, then we are going to take our levels in. Then we're going to write down our levels. So there will always be a little bit of mix and match between text and writing, which would make potentially doing this a little bit easier for most people. But for me, I actually would prefer to have mostly writing around here and then a little bit of typing just for permanence sake, things that I know are going to change. And I'm actually going to show you a different character sheet if you're not as new and you don't want to worry about you don't need any of the form fillable stuff, and you're not going to do any type of home brewing class. You're just going to do basics, and that one's in DM's Guild. I know where that is, so I'll have those linked in the description. But we'll get to that. So if you're somebody that maybe again you're just kind of going with PHP stuff, or you're relatively newer, what's nice about this one is it has some. You'll find others that have PDFs of or drop downs, and they'll have built in this was a guild artisan, or they were a hermit, and you can put in your names. So that is a fat finger right there. So I'm gonna be it. We're probably not gonna change the fact that we are a tiefling. I'm just picking arbitrarily stuff. You could pick obviously you can pick any of the alignments that exist. We're just going to make them our true neutral character. And experience points, obviously, you don't want to type in anything here because that's going to be changing over time and potentially not at all, because you may just go off of a milestone system. I would like to have a discussion someday in the future about whether or not experience points are, how necessary experience points are in Dungeons and Dragons, and the infrequency in which they are done, and really whether or not I think they're viable. That's a discussion I think I would love to have one day. But obviously, yeah, so you can always, this, obviously, because this is meant to potentially be used, for a long time. They do have this little box for inspiration. Again, obviously, we're not going to have permanent inspiration or something. We're going to leave that out. So then other things that are likely to potentially change or not. So if you believe you're probably not going to change, if you're not not going to be a monk, or I believe a barbarian also gets a speed boost later on. So we're a druid, we are tiefling, so our movement is going to stay at 30 feet. So if you want, this could be something you also maybe choose to keep blank and not worry about that. For example, hit points. You don't want to type in anything here because, that's going to change. Your hit dice. So I do like to actually run this as since we know we're going to be a druid, we know that this is going to stay a D8. But you notice how I've made space here. So now I can write in the amount of hit dice that we have. So if I want, I could do, so say we're going to be level 4. So I can write in 4 hit dice here, and then pretend this piece of paper. I can say I currently have 4 hit dice, right? And then I can put that down if we do any short rests and stuff like that. Obviously, no permanent death or successes or failures for death saves. We don't want to worry about that. But these obviously, so what this can be really useful for is having a much more compact amount of backstory, because, as you type it in, inevitably it will continue to compensate the space. Now, obviously, it can get so small that when you're looking at a piece of paper, it's going to feel in your hands kind of like this. that's really hard to read. And like even when you zoom in, you know, yeah, it's easier, but it's gonna print. It depends on how well your printer is. If you don't have the best printer, these can be really hard to read if your printer doesn't do well at small text. So that's something you have to just keep in mind. But obviously, in these sections here, that's not something that's big of a worry because these don't really require. These are usually maybe a few sentences. Maybe the personality traits is a few bulletin points. But these should only be maybe a sentence or two, and really nothing too big. So on the plus side, you can type in here. These are ones to type in for sure. So I'll just put these as type here. And what I think I'll do is I'll put this as an example. I think I'll put this one out there as an example one, and I think I'll link it down below if you want a copy of this PDF type. I would rather get to the original blank one, just so people can essentially just to kind of shout out the person who made it. But if I can't find it anymore, then I will just put this one out there and call it a day. But I did not make this one. I just want to make sure that's clear. All right, so things that'll obviously change then will be any of these. Now, I've seen this on the sheets before. I very much do not entirely understand who would put any type of spell casting here, outside of maybe some. I guess you could put like cantrips here, but yeah, I guess you could put like cantrips in here if you didn't have weapons. If you're like a wizard and you don't have a quarterstaff, you just have a wand. Then maybe. But I've never put spells here, though you could if you wanted to. Nothing is definitely stopping you from doing that. But otherwise, let's see, features and traits is something that if you wanted to, you could put things like, you could put, racial feats, racial features, you can put, and here's what you can do is now you can create your list of class features. So this is something that I really love doing. So we're gonna go back to me here for a second here, just in case anything decides to pop up that I don't want. But we're gonna open D&D Beyond because I forgot to open it before I hit record, which is my bad. But once it loads, Firefox always opens really slowly for me lately, and I don't know why. But we're gonna open Firefox and we're gonna go right to D&D Beyond because we're gonna utilize. We're going to utilize what we have for us. So we're just going to go with a druid class that is inside of. We're just going to go with the druid class that exists in D&D Beyond. And we can pick a number of them we have available. So let's see, screen cap. All right, so let's go. Let's go right over here. So we can go right to the creating a druid section. So we can go down. We're going to find our class features, which we need right here. All right, so we're going to go class features here, and we're going to start with, now, you can pick and choose from these what you need, honestly. You can, and this, in terms of the information you need, obviously a lot of this is just kind of pick and choose. For preparing and casting spells, this is something I largely just recommend you I don't want to say you just figure out, but this is something that you should make the attempt to just kind of get to know really well. Also, the spellcasting DC and attack modifier will inevitably actually become available to us later down the road, but to a degree. It's something, though, we can consistently cross-reference. So we are going to we're going to not worry about this. We're not going to copy all this. We just know, because we'll follow the table for the amount of cantrips and spells that we know and whatnot. So, and then if anything, you'll just need to know how many you can do. You can cast, which we'll tell you here. You'll just need to keep this. If anything, if you want, you can copy this paragraph here into your character sheet, which we'll do for this one, just for the sake of it. There we go. So we'll go right. Can I please? Thank you. So we'll just we're gonna do spell casting. And then we're just gonna type in a little bit. This is how I like to do it. Oops. So I like to create some brackets. 1, 2, 3. We will, with just kind of about a 3 space in here, and then, bam. So this will look a little thick right now, but this will become a little easier as we type in more. So it's going with a big font because that's just how it defaults. But inevitably, as we get more stuff in here, it's going to condense just like it did up here. But this is something that you may not, again, need to put as much text into. And if you need to, you could just bam, and then bam. And even that, you could just do, you could just do this. And bam, we've consolidated way more. So we'll make sure we're down a little farther. Okay, I'm going to go one more. All right, so now we're going to go back here. And again, we kind of know this stuff, and we're going to see this stuff later as we go down. And wow, damn it, we're getting near the end of this. This is going to be a longer podcast, and I think part of it's going to be because this is kind of a long, this is not a quick thing to do. So get ready for that. So otherwise, yeah, we're just going to put some of our, we're going to put any of the things that we've eventually learned. So one of the things we won't worry about. So wild shape. This is something that's very deep, and we may need to do more like copying, pasting. If anything, take a picture of this. Keep it available to you on your phone, especially like these. These 3 parts for sure. Otherwise, if anything, you can try to write some of that down, but I would just do it as like, wild shape, and then we'll kind of. So actually, and I did this wrong. I want to do that, but then spell casting will be here. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. We'll do that because then what we want these in the front of our abilities. Because then what we're gonna do is we're gonna checkbox these once we're playing, and we're just gonna go down the line and continue to do that up until we're gonna do this even though we're level 4. We're gonna go all the way up to Archdruid. And then if you don't know what you want to do for your subclass, then by all means, figure that out. But this is we're creating a level 4 character, so we would know. So we would go all the way, to, we'll just say circle of wildfire, which I have not read. Oh, we'll have to look at this. I haven't read this actually. This is the oh no, this is different. Sorry, this is the oh no, that was a barbarian. I haven't actually read this. I'll have to look at this. I'll have to look at this Circle of Wildfire. That's interesting. I haven't actually. I just discovered this. Dang, I didn't even realize this came out. You can kind of see where I've mentally been in the last few weeks, but if it came out a while ago. But we'll say like we're gonna do Circle of the Land. So then we can copy all these parts of the Circle of the Land that are relevant. So we obviously not all of these tables, but we will collect from these that we need to, but more importantly, we'll write down these names, because if you already know most of these, or you can kind of commit a good amount of these to memory, once you get there, all you really need to do is put the names down. Also, now, if you start to find yourself running out of space because you need more information because you don't know them, then all you need to do is actually write down, just put the names of each of these down. Except for maybe this one. Maybe just leave this as this because it's close enough. But just put the names down, and then if you need to copy the whole text because you're not familiar with everything, go to one of the bigger box, character sheet options that exist out there, like these spell descriptions and backstory. And instead of using them for those things, go to, just copy those whole things down here. You can put, for example, for this is, spell casting, and just continue to go down because these are huge slots and they'll still do the compressing, they'll still compress as much as they need to, but they're obviously, it's a lot more space to work with, and it makes it, way easier. So that is something that is a useful tactic to be able to kind of have all of the information for your class available to you if you need to check up on it, but then you have a way of kind of knowing, all right, like, and you can put levels next to these, you can put like a 2 here, so this is going to be wild shape level 2. What I've actually done as well is I've actually put, if something has a minute number of uses, so wild shape, for example, has 2 uses. I would do this sometimes, or if you don't remember, or if you are unsure, I've also done I've created a blank and then out of two, and then I will write two here, stuff like that. I've also done that for uses. So this is something that can be really useful, and this bar right here can be really useful for that type of thing. Because of the fact that you can obviously insert all of that. And then obviously other proficiencies in languages. If you wanted to put any quick notes for any of your, anything else that you are unsure of, like what armors are available to you, any of your languages, these are obviously pretty permanent and you can add proficiencies later if you really need to, and you don't have to worry about erasing others, or whiting out or anything like that. So the benefit is, you don't have to worry about like erasing anything you type in here, but you can always write in anything you need to add. If you like learn any proficiencies and whatnot. So you can always just type anything in here that is useful to you, and then just figure out what you need. And similarly with this, these are ever changing. I wouldn't type into these spots because these are things that can change all the time. I always question the use of this box, but it's whatever. I guess it's the second spot if you forget to look up there. I don't know. But yeah, obviously money is going to always change, so that's something that you shouldn't worry about typing into. And then finally, we'll go into the spellcasting class. So if we believe, as far as we believe, we're going to, that's weird. They don't have a druid here. That's very strange. But, you could type in druid, and then, again, just because there are type in boxes doesn't mean you have to stick with them. You can type in whatever you want. Like I can type in artificer if I really wanted to, right? But we're a druid, so we're going to stick with the druid. Your spellcasting ability, so if you wanted to, this could calculate it for you. That's what's really nice. If you're a new character, if you're a new player and you don't know how to calculate these, you can utilize that. Otherwise, obviously, also if you want to, keep these blank, especially if you're something that can change their spells on a relatively regular basis. And there's a lot of spells out there. But what I would do potentially if you're somebody who can, if you're going to use, if you really know you're just going to want to stick with a pool of spells, right? These have these prepared boxes. So what you could do, because your cantrips can't change, but what you could do is you could continually go down through each of the boxes and just type in fill these up, all the lines down into any of the spells you believe you'll use. Go through as many resources as you can. And then one of the things I would absolutely recommend getting, especially for any class, if you want to go paper, is get one of these decks. The arcane one is a thick boy. This thing's a thick boy, but it is very much worth the amount. These are relatively inexpensive, so it's something that focus webcam. These are pretty inexpensive, and I think they're well worth the amount that they cost. They have a very good amount of this was $23, and these are a lot of cards. And the other ones are cheaper, which are like the druid one, which I should have grabbed, but I grabbed this not knowing what class I was going to pick for this example. So again, my bad. But for example, here's the two. I have a druid deck actually. So you can see on the back, what spell level this is going to be, and you could just build a deck for your character based on the whole list of things that you put into your character sheet here. So now everything in here, can be represented by a card. And now you don't need to worry about writing down the information because you have this deck with you that'll have all of this information for you right available. So it makes it way easier for sure. Something that I highly recommend. Oh boy. Okay. Let's refocus here. There we go. Webcam. So I definitely would recommend, oops, my bad. This is the second time I've accidentally hit that. I should just delete that one. But yeah, this is something obviously you can type in this if you want, but don't type in your spell slots and spells used because that's obviously going to continually change as your character grows. But maybe you don't plan on, maybe you don't plan on adding or changing a whole lot of spells, and if anything, if you want to route them, you can. I would recommend against routing your spells out all the way up until 9th level, just because your character may change. Things may happen to your character that would change their personality. You may change your personality towards the character. So just play with it. Don't worry. Don't try not to plan for the future too much, which is kind of why I do recommend just writing these down. But just write down the names. Don't worry about. I would just recommend getting something like this or investing in one of these if you plan to go full pen and pencil and paper. Now, this is a section in which you can utilize both typing and writing. So obviously, character name, again, not going to change. Age, this I probably would keep. If you want to type this, you could, but this is probably the thing that may or may not change depending on how long your DM plans to have your adventure last, right? If you plan on having it last for years, then inevitably we will run into that. But your eye colors may not change, your skin color may not change, hair color might not, weight, height, those things might or might not change. So if you wanted to keep these things around just as a relative, because again, it's not like you may not necessarily worry about keeping your character's weight number in your head every time, but there may just be things that they also tie with, maybe a previous symbol, like a family. You can put that, you can type that here because things like that may not change. Character appearance, you can. This is something where you would need something like a way to edit a PDF, but you can insert a picture because for some reason you can't really insert a picture in this one by default. But otherwise, your character backstory, you can definitely. This honestly, in terms of your character sheet, you should just have. I would recommend honestly for just your character sheet, just have the baselines of things. So like life events, if you did this is your life section in Xanathar's, or just snippets from your backstory to put in here. Don't put the whole thing. It's just not necessary to have in your character sheet. I would then what I would recommend doing is, because I know that there's this backstory sheet here, but if you're going to use this for labeling out all of the class features you're inevitably going to have, you may want to use both of these pages. So as a result, this is really all it's going to be in your backstory. I would honestly just recommend you doing some type of Google Docs or a Word document and just typing out the whole thing. Or you can be a real nerd like me. I don't have any readily next to me here. I like to use those little character journals that I get for different characters of mine that I know I'm going to have for a while. Or I'll reuse ones because I'll just have it exist essentially with a DM. So if it's for this person's thing, I will have this character journal no matter what the characters may be. If I know it's maybe one that I know will change relatively frequently or stuff like that. So it can depend. You'll have to kind of make your own call on that, on whether or not how you want to make that. But I wouldn't put a lot into your character sheet. It's just not. This isn't really where it belongs, especially if you plan to write out a whole story and whatnot. If you plan to just put snippets, then obviously just again, this is where snippets and quick reference needs should be for your backstory. Similarly with additional features and traits, if you just want to add especially if you add feats, you can always throw them into here. You can write them in and make them way easier to deal with. Treasure, obviously things that you'll just want to write in. You're really not going to start with treasure. So if anything, just kind of keep these in mind. All right. And then we're back to spell descriptions. So that's pretty much in terms of what you need to put in. These are all, I would honestly, almost this whole page is something that is kind of a mix. This you should type in because this is going to be set once you make your character. So I would type these in. I wouldn't type these ones in because you can type in some of these, but obviously you're going to write into these later. So just make sure you save room. What you can always do is if you type in somewhere, you can just hit enter on this and it'll obviously inevitably become smaller, so that's something to keep in mind. If you want to be able to make the text smaller, just kind of do that. Then you can save room for writing later. But then otherwise, these I would potentially recommend writing these in anyway, just because you're not going to write in a whole lot of info here anyway. And who knows, maybe you'll get betrayed or something like that, and you won't actually want to be a part of this organization anymore. Things could happen to your character. Just kind of future proofing your character is something that really can reflect on whether or not you believe this character will last a very long time. Because inevitably, say you work for like an adventuring organization or some type of like almost bounty hunting thing, you effectively are, going, inevitably, you never know, like you could get betrayed, or your alliance will change, maybe things will happen, will kind of change your idea of like who and what you believe in. So like these are things to just kind of keep in mind as a potential, as a potential of things that could exist for your character as they kind of move through their life and this adventure. So I would just keep those things in mind. Otherwise, honestly, what we have done here is pretty much the way that I, dang it, I will set up my campaign or my character sheets moving forward in the coming year. So as really, honestly, as useful as D&D Beyond is, right? Having all of this information, and if you have any other, like if you have PDFs, like homebrew PDFs and stuff like that, like, as great as it is to have a computer in front of you looking at everything so you always have quick reference, like if I just want to search, like, if I needed to search like a little more information about extra attack, extra effect, if I wanted a little bit more quickness on extra attack, boom, I can just go right to extra attack, in certain things, right? Like you can see extra attack beginning at 5th level, you can attack twice instead of once whenever you take the attack action on your turn. Right? Like, there's just always going to be a benefit to having the internet available to you. However, what you never lose is your phone. Generally, you're going to have your phone on you all the time, for whatever needs you have. But having a phone, or at least even a tablet, is way more convenient, and to be fair, D&D Beyond does not currently have the mobile character sheets prepared, which would make it easier to use something like your phone or a tablet. But honestly, the other thing that's kind of annoying to me, and the reason I don't use a tablet or my phone, is mainly because of the most boomer sounding thing in the planet. But you got to connect at some point, and not a lot of these devices are super great for battery life, especially for the amount of time that you may need to have your character sheet on. Like you're going to be playing for hours and hours and hours, having your phone on, especially your phone, because you may have your phone then to answer a text message or look at stuff while maybe you're not currently playing, right? Because like that's the thing. Like I personally, even though it sounds bad, I kind of check out when I'm not a part of a scene in a campaign. So like say your party, part of your party goes shopping, the other part of your party is setting up a trap for your next mission, right? So they're going shopping, I'm not a part of that. I don't actually worry about like really paying attention to what's happening all the time, and I'll take that opportunity to like look at stuff because my character isn't there. I don't need the omnipotent knowledge of knowing what is happening to them because my character isn't going to know anyway. So it doesn't remove me from immersion because my character isn't there anyway. I'm doing my own thing. So I can just kind of use this opportunity to recheck in with society and life. So that's a reason that I kind of am, but that's the thing, that'll use more battery. So the reality is like, there is, and if you're using a tablet, then obviously that's generally what you're going to be using it for. And if you want to check in with the world, you can go to your phone. But but not a lot of tablets have amazing battery life. I do have a friend that uses a tablet. He's our one of my, the Friday DM of lore, Scott, that I've mentioned, who was also in our, he was the guy in our, origin stories video. He uses a tablet with a little keyboard thing, and obviously it's pretty portable. Like, this is obviously more portable than even paper and pencil because you can write on it. But there's also just a different feel when you have this stuff in your hand, right? And again, maybe it's because I'm more old school, right? I started with pencil and paper, and it just kind of brings me back. But it's similarly to how I feel about using a virtual tabletop versus a real tabletop, where like you just kind of like I have I know what I have because it feels like I have a spell book. And I know there are things that there are like makers on like Etsy, and if you go to cons you'll a lot of times see it, like they have these little like spell book things that you can write into, so you can actually have your character like a spell book for your character, which is a great concept, and I would totally recommend that. Absolutely. I'm not negating that at all, but not everybody wants to write this stuff down. Like not everybody wants to write it down at all. But so it still feels like though you have a spell book in your hand because you're able to just kind of sequence through everything and really feel like you're looking through your spells. It just, I don't know, it really has a nice feel to it. And honestly, the number one thing that is really annoying, and the reason that having stuff like this, having your character sheet, and something that is very dependent on your situation, is having to relay information. So if you're kind of like me, and your DM does not, so and this is more related to our Thursday DM, they do not have D&D Beyond, and they have not made the investment because of a show they run into a number of D&D Beyond based tools. They are not probably going to worry about using all that stuff, and if they need to do certain things, they're not going to know how to do it. And so then they have to, and that's the thing. It ruins. Sometimes it can ruin elements of surprise. It can sometimes not. It's very. It depends. But that's kind of the big thing where it's just kind of like this, like people people really just kind of underestimate, I think, the power of being able to, especially for a spell. Like say your DM wants to reread web, right? Well, like it's like, can you double check like what for web? Like, because you could just say I cast web without picking up the card, right? Because say you relatively know what web does, but you don't want to read the whole thing every time you're about to cast a spell. Well, it's like, okay, well I'm just gonna cast web, and then your DM's like, all right, well wait, how much does that last for again? Oh, that lasts for an hour, and you can just kind of pull it up the card for them if they need any extra information. It's like, can you pull up the information for web instead of going into the book? Bam, here's a card, right? That's what's nice about having stuff readily available. And obviously, when they don't have things like D&D Beyond, or they don't really use that, obviously they're not. And if there's somebody that kind of just likes to go right to the book, then it's sometimes it's good to match your DM's level of technology, because then you're not worrying about whether like having to hand over the laptop over the DM screen and them having to like figure out your all your stuff. It's something that's very dependent, and again, like I said, I think this potentially sounds like some of the most like boomer-esque problems with D&D, just because it almost sounds so anti-technology, but the real thing is to utilize honestly both technology and the classic style to just give yourself a different feel. Like I feel like if most people play without D&D Beyond, without all the stuff, there's a different feeling that is involved. It's the exact same thing as the difference between playing on Roll20 versus in real life, like an IRL. Like there is a palpable difference between both like systems, both ways of playing, and it doesn't degrade either or. It just is a different feeling, and that's kind of why to me it's just a fun challenge to go entirely pen and paper in 2020, just because again it's fun. It's something that's interesting. It's something that isn't what I've been doing, what I've been used to for the last like 2 years or so, or a little bit less, right? Like it's just a little different, and it's something that's kind of nice because I've had to do it for playing 4 stars, but I've had to use the PDFs of, stars to be able to check stuff. And so there's no way I'm removing, I'm totally removed from my laptop. Absolutely. But what's nice about it is that I can keep my laptop closed and I can consolidate my space, because before, when I would use my laptop, it just kind of took up a little bit more space because of the stuff I had to have and whatnot. So it's just kind of nice to be able to, if you need to compact yourself into a smaller table, it's a little easier. Because there's something to be said about the vertical space sometimes in a table, because not every table is like super wide, or not always at a circular table. So your vertical space suddenly can become a problem if your DM wants to put a map down, and then all of a sudden you've got to like put your laptop on your lap, but then maybe you don't have room behind you. It depends on your situation. I'm not saying, this whole thing isn't meant to be, playing on pencil and paper is the number one way to play. It isn't. It absolutely isn't. There are benefits to both ways of playing, depending on what your given situation is. And that is going to be the bigger takeaway when we get to the actual video of playing with pencil and paper in 2020. That's a big thing, right? Like the whole thing is going to be based on, look, in general, if you want to play either or, who cares, right? You pick what you want to do. No one's going to tell you what to do. Like, just do whatever you want. But to me, I think it's a fun challenge. It's nostalgic, and it just has a different feeling when you play with like more physical things. It's different. That's why I use things like character journals. It's why I want to go back to using stuff like this, because it just feels different, and it's something that I just want to experience and I want to experiment with. Because I plan on playing a very large amount of D&D next year, outside of our shows. So yeah, it's gonna be a big challenge, but I'm really excited for it, and it's something that I definitely think is going to be really fun to do. And I would definitely challenge you, if you are somebody who's been using total electronic D&D, give it a shot. If not for the whole year, maybe a month, right? Or maybe a month. Try doing like a whole month with just pure pen and paper. You might find yourself enjoying it, or you might be able to feel the difference after a little bit. Or when you go back, you might feel that there was a difference. You had a different feeling when you were playing with like physical objects. Just give it a shot. Give it a challenge. And if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But there are definitely ways to go utilize the electronics that we have and the easy access to information and copying, pasting, to then enhance the pencil and paper experience so that it's not so cumbersome as maybe it once was, and potentially can be almost more compact. Because I guarantee you, I will be able to find a way in which, because that's the thing, I can bring out my character sheet, the cards I need, and then everything else can go right in my backpack away from me. Then all I've got is the character sheet, the cards, and that's it. I've got nothing else. And that is exactly what my goal is, and so we're going to see what's up. Obviously, though, these decks only have spells from the player's handbook, and there is a Xanathar spell deck, though, you can't get, so that is also out there, just so you know. Before you go out and buy these thinking that it's going to have Toll of the Dead in your cleric deck, it will not. So you'll have to get to the Xanathar's deck for that one. But either way, these are definitely really useful. I really like using these. I'm planning on going paperless or papered, full paper in 2020, which is going to be really exciting, but also probably relatively challenging at some points. But I'm doing it for fun, so that's all that matters. So if you want to watch the video about going full pen and paper in 2020, you can hit subscribe for that. It's not going to be as detailed, but it's just going to be a little bit more of a fun look and a little bit more into what you'll actually really see me build a character for AL. You're actually going to see me build an AL character that I'm going to use in 2020. So that's going to be real. That's what's really going to be fun about it. And we're going to go through a whole thing. It's going to be cool. I'm excited. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you guys in the next episode, hopefully with Franny back. This was a little longer. Thank you much. Game Freak decided that they did not want to focus on putting all half of 1,000 Pokemon, over like I think we are at what, like 802 or something like that now in terms of like total Pokemon count. Let's see, like total number of Pokemon here.